What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode, another day of the Blade Dive. I'm stoked you're tuned in. My name is Parker Bohan. I'm your host as always. If you're here for the first time on the podcast listening, go ahead and subscribe. I would be so stoked for you to support us that way. Now's a good time for me to tell you too and ask if you could follow us on social media at The Blade Dive on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And one last way you can support the podcast is if you have 60 seconds out of your day, leave us a review. It really does help the show. Okay, my guest today, I'm super excited to have on the show. His name is Kevin Soller. If you don't know Kevin, well, you're getting ready to. And Kevin has definitely described himself as a product of his own environment. Growing up in Breckinridge, Colorado, Kevin was a pro cyclist, pro mountain biker, never shied away from doing the Nordic thing. Dude was an athlete, still is. And he puts a spider excavator in places that I wouldn't even put a regular excavator. The dude is a hell of an operator. I will say, too, Kevin has been around some pretty heavy influences in his career, and we get into that. We also talk about mountain towns and maybe how not so positive they can be. We discuss what the future looks like on every show as we do. We dive deep into what good employees versus good operators look like. And we also discuss his opportunities that he had with the US Open and X Games. Pretty cool opportunities to operate machines in and around. Kevin's had an incredible career, and he loves to have a good laugh. This episode is deep, and so you're going to want to stay tuned. So you know the deal. If you're at home, go ahead and grab your favorite drink, kick your feet up. And if you're in the machine anywhere, you know what to do. Turn up the volume.
Just go ahead and give it the juice. Already.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Blade Dive. It's another day, another episode of the Blade Dive. And with me today in the virtual booth is, I'm just going to go ahead and give him a title too, the Swiss Army knife of what I would like to call the dirt and the snow world. Kevin Soller is with me in the booth, and this man has been around some incredible equipment, spider excavators in the dirt world, winch cats at locations like Breckinridge, and has also contributed to some massive events in the snow world industry like X Games and the US Open. I'm not trying to throw a whole lot at you, Kevin, but welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Oh, wow. That's, yeah, man. That whole intro, God, that sound, the starting of the cat. I'm stoked. I'm stoked to be here. This is going to be fun. And Swiss Army knife. I appreciate that.
But I will say that leading into that, I think that's a really good segue because, you know, for everybody that's listening, like I did not know Kevin. This is my first time really interacting with Kevin ever. And the component of Kevin that really drew me to him was the projection through other people's commentary about him and just how positive of a dude he is and what he's been into and like little snippets of his life. And yeah, there's some funny shit that's out there on social media that he's produced that's hilarious and definitely puts a smile on my face. But like from the way that Kevin was described to me by other people, I'm going, no, like that's the same dude. Like the contrast between the person that I was seeing on social media and I'm going, wow, okay, I got to talk to this guy. And I just think that because of that, I really want to go into kind of who you are and what you were about growing up, because you were pretty much in a iconic location as a kid. And I want you to get into that and kind of peel back some layers on the onion or pull back the wool from the eyes or whatever you want to label it as. But I want to know what it was like growing up as Kevin Soller. So maybe you could paint a picture of what that was like for us.
I mean, besides just the straightforward, a fuck ton of sunscreen, I suffer from gingivitis. I've been a strawberry blonde. I don't have freckles, so I'm not quite a ginger, but I grew up at the high elevations outside of Breckinridge, Colorado. Unreal. I was literally born in Frisco, Colorado. So when every asshat that's been in a ski town, how many seasons you been here? I could literally claim that I was a true local, but I never looked at it like that. I was fortunate. My childhood home was between Summit County and Park County, up literally at the foot of Quandary, one of the highest 14ers in Colorado. My house was over 11,000 feet growing up. And not to derail this, but this is a question that I asked my mom a couple years ago. Newborn babies, generally in high mountains, are put on oxygen after they are born.
Our little girl was too. Our little girl was born in Frisco, so I can relate.
Yeah, no. They sent me home 2 or 3 days after I was born to 11,000 plus feet with nothing.
Holy shit.
Kind of just asking my mom, I'm like, was I fucking blue for like the first 2 months of my life? Like, what? She just, and my parents are amazing, but she just laughs at me and she's like, well, it kind of explains something. Maybe some brain cells went. I'm like, oh, yeah, perfect. That's it. Just start off with some oxygen deprivation right off the bat. This is a great way to go. But that neighborhood was an unreal place to grow up. I mean, there wasn't a lot of kids directly in that neighborhood. We had friends all around there, but we had 2 massive mountains on both sides of us. There was a beaver pond that, I mean, my brother and I spent so much damn time outside, and most of my time outside as a very young kid came from sitting in a sandbox. My dad was at that time, the assistant superintendent at the golf course. So we had, the direct contact to the best sand possible. So our sandbox was amazing. And I don't really know where that love came from, but I would seriously sit in that thing like a fucking job, playing with every machine. But my go-to was the loader. And my parents still to this day have this damn thing. It's covered in rust. It's probably why either my immunity is just through the roof or I have ingrained tetanus from touching steel tractors like they used to be. But dude, I would sit outside and play in this damn thing all the time. And that's where, I had to fucking lather up in literally a paint coat of sunscreen to go outside. It's no joke. But where we were, I mean, I hiked a 14er when I was 6 years old. And my mom would kill me if she made it sound like I did it willingly. Apparently, I bitched the entire way up, but once I got to the top, I was on top of the world, truly. And you could look off the summit of this mountain and see our house. So earlier when I said I'm a product of my environment, I grew up in the mountains, and that is where my love for being outside, snow sports, everything came from. And just the simplistic pleasure of being outside, that stillness of getting away from people. It's something that I still to this day at 32 years old, I try not to take for granted. I've lived in some pretty amazing areas. I've traveled around a lot, but it's those days when I was a very little kid that instilled me taking time and getting lost in the woods. And dude, we'd get lost as shit up there.
We'll talk about the outdoor component, like beyond the tractor too. Like one of the coolest things that I think that when you and I caught up and were chatting about kind of you and what you had for an environment was your backyard. You literally were gone. Like you were, hey, we're out. We're going to go walk through the woods. I mean, that to me is like in the change between life as it is we know it, or life as we know it now for parents who are a little bit more paranoid. No disrespect to those parents. If you're a helicopter parent, I'm definitely one of those. But if compared to like the late 80s, early 90s, and in that era, if you were growing up as a kid in that era, sounds like you were at 32, that you had to have been just like, we out, peace. You know what I mean?
Just gone all the time. I mean, we had VHS, we didn't have cable. In the winter, we had a hill that was directly next to our house that our neighbor would track it out on his snowmobile. Had the best sledding hill in the world. Our road was steep enough that we had one of those radio flyer sleds.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I quickly was relegated from driving because I would purposely steer us into the snowbanks for no purpose besides wanting to see how far I could fly.
Yeah,
But
the explosion at the end, maybe the yard sale.
oh,
Yeah.
right. But here's the thing that would never sink in is like, since I was driving, I was always the one sitting up front. We'd slam into a snowbank and everyone else behind me would just slam me harder into the snowbank.
Lesson learned, but maybe
I feel
not.
like most kids, yeah, lesson definitely not learned. Lesson just pushed in through the front of my head, out the back of my head.
Yeah.
But
It was
summertime,
it was an adrenaline rush, yeah.
oh, dude, exactly. And like, you think about that now. I mean, Breckinridge back then was quiet. Like, what that Quandary Trailhead is now, like, it's borderline chaotic. I mean, it is chaotic. You go up there in the summer and there is 400 cars parked.
Right? I mean, and I guess that's I remember, I can relate, like, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening right now can relate too. It's just the tangible piece of being able to go out and explore it. I mean, we don't have to run like too far down the tangent, but I just think that there is a direct correlation with the ability to be comfortable, to be a little bit of I don't know, an introvert in a machine, and being able to be kind of like that same type of person when you're on your own out in the woods. It's like, I'm cool right now with like the few people that I am with, and being underneath the blanket of stars or trees or clouds or wind or whatever it is that I'm around. I just think I've always thought there's a direct correlation there.
It's a savviness, and
A lot of,
it's
I guess, yeah, that's a good way to put it too. I gotta know. Because I think everybody else does too. Like, you were probably introduced to skiing at a young age, but I want to know if it was kind of through like the ski school lessons because you were in Summit County area, or if it was more like, at the home, backyard hill, barbecue involved as well. Like, what was that like for Kevin Soller?
as we got a little bit older, there was a pretty rad program through ski school called Bombers, and somewhat associated with the school program as well, where the adults would take groups of kids and keep them skiing and go out once a week. But the Bombers is where I started meeting friends and skiing with other kids. There was no rules. I mean, borderline, they didn't want us to jump, but that was pretty much impossible. Like, we were jumping everything we possibly could. And when you're that young, you can bounce. When I was in kindergarten, this is the first year, or kindergarten, you weren't allowed to be a part of the ski program, but first grade, I was allowed to be a part of the snow sports program, and you got to pick whether you wanted to do hockey, alpine skiing, Nordic, and I chose Nordic for the sole reason that there was a girl that I had a crush on that was going to do Nordic, which that decision threw my parents for a curveball. I mean, they cross country skied, but they figured that I would have absolutely gone with Alpine. But I was chasing a girl, and I think I asked her to be my Valentine, and I don't know if I ever heard back on that one.
Damn, dude.
Just crushed from a young
That's heavy.
age.
I was just gonna say, man, like, don't let me down easy. Go ahead and just drop me hard.
Oh yeah.
Oh, man.
And like after first grade, we moved. We moved out of Breckinridge. My dad took an opportunity to go up to Montana and build a golf course. So we lived just outside of Anaconda, but that was a giant momentum piece in my skiing background, because not that we weren't financially, just like I said, we weren't wealthy. My parents were making ends meet, but racing Alpine in especially Colorado is no secret that it's fucking expensive. When we
Yeah.
moved up to Montana, my parents were able to afford for my brother and I to race Alpine. Most of what, I mean, yeah, we like, racing was important, but when you're second through fourth grade, like, you're skiing at that point. And we had a coach that was a Galande champion. We'd spend more time building jumps, and I skied every single resort, I believe, in Montana throughout that 2.5 years that we were there. That's a pretty surreal experience that those were the ski trips that we took. We didn't take ski vacations. My parents didn't have money. Oh, we're gonna go back down to Colorado and go on a ski vacation. No, we went to races, and that was a way that we could go A, skiing, B, we saw the entire state of Montana.
At some point in time, you guys transitioned back to Breck, right? It's not like you were there in Montana for much longer. You came back to Summit County.
Yeah, and that's where it's such a weird, quick little blurb, and who knows what would have happened if we stayed up there. I probably would have been a fucking rodeo clown. I mean, I shit you not. We would play rodeo at recess when I lived in Montana, and me and my couple friends would put dirt in our lip and pretend that we were riding bulls, and the teachers would just sit there and shake their heads, and they're like, "Yep, those boys are a lost cause." But my dad had a call to go back down to Breckinridge, and Breckinridge was still home. The thing that we missed about the small town community was things like the rec center. The fact that, Montana was friendly, but it's wide open spaces. It's a long way for anything up there. And being in a much smaller town like Breckinridge, it was more manageable for my parents. They could literally kick us out and not be worried that we're going to end up either A, with a fucking grizzly around my head, or who knows what. So when my dad got the opportunity to go back to the Breckenridge golf course and they added another 9 holes, that's where, I lived until I graduated high school. So Breck was always home. There was a small stint in Montana, but Breck is home. I mean, it's funny thinking about it. I mean, when we moved back down to Colorado, my parents were able to get a house just outside of town. So we were able to more or less walk down Warriors Mark or ski down the bike trail or whatever, get my mom to drop us down at Peak 9, and I would go ski for an entire day, just be done, gone. See ya. And, so I getting into middle school, racing obviously wasn't going to happen, but I was convinced by an older friend of my brother's who played on his baseball team that they were trying to recruit people for the Nordic team. And they simply told me, yeah, you get to skip school on Fridays to go do Nordic races. Like, done. Perfect. And that's where I began Nordic racing. And I raced competitively all the way through high school. I had quite the ability. And that's something early on that I found out that I had was an engine, and I could go. And racing Nordic was different than racing Alpine, obviously. I mean, you're fucking wearing spandex outside, freezing your dick off. But I liked it. I liked that adrenaline of pushing as hard as I possibly could. And once again, I got to travel all over the state of Colorado. Throughout my time racing, kind of jumping into high school a little bit, I raced Junior Olympics once in Lake Placid, New York, once up on Donner Summit. So I was still able to travel and ski race. It was just not Alpine. But as far as I was concerned, Alpine was now literally just free time. And that to me was amazing, that it never at any point in my life became a job. And that was something that I saw with a lot of younger friends that were racing Alpine. They hit a point where it wasn't fun anymore. And to me, it was always a place to just escape.
Just with your equipment background, I have to ask, was there ever an interest in trying to groom or construct Nordic tracks?
There was.
Skinny trails?
Yes and no. I always wanted to put jumps into trails. Like, there's been a couple World Cups where they put jumps inside of like sprint race tracks, which is just hilarious in itself. But that is kind of where I got to see what good grooming was like. We could tell a difference of someone that was running on whatever race course, whatever we were training, was a good groomer. And so Breckenridge Golf Course started to put a Nordic Center together. Being that my dad was now the superintendent, my dad was running a cat, and he was setting tracks. And it wasn't anything elaborate, but there's all these little areas where machines were involved in my life And my dad took pride in, I mean, shit. It's probably doesn't make sense to anyone, but someone that can literally groom a Nordic track well, like half the people out there, okay, you just fucking drop your tailor. Like, no, it's an art. I mean, everything there's skill required and whatnot. It was there, but I mean, I was so distracted by everything else in life that I couldn't focus on anything. It was just
One of the things that you literally are without even like this is totally out of the snow world. This is definitely the road world and the dirt world, but you were a bike guy. You were a cyclist and like you weren't just some like I got a passion on the side and I'm working towards maybe doing something with it. Like you were good at it right out of the gate. And you were a hell of a cyclist. And the bike world, not only the cyclist thing, the road thing, but the dirt world and the mountain biking component was a huge piece of you. Maybe touch on a component or a piece of that. I just let us in on that story.
there's a lot of people that don't realize that I raced professionally for almost 10 years. Um,
Wow,
I
man.
raced pro elite road. I raced pro downhill. I raced pro cross country. I raced pro enduro. I can define myself as a cyclist. It started from being back in Colorado. There was a local series, the mountain bike or Map Sports Productions would put up local races in around Summit County, and I started doing those when I was 13. Never taken them seriously, but that is where something happened, and I don't even know where the idea came from to begin racing bikes. Biking was always a part of our lives. I mean, we were going to Moab at a super young
Mm.
age. My family loading up the Subaru and going out there. Riding was always a part of our lives, but I think it was partially because of racing Nordic, that endurance, needing to find something to build cardio throughout the summer that I got into racing a little bit. Fast forward a little bit to 16 is where racing truly took over my life and almost stopped. I got slightly distracted with some friends on Father's Day before I was supposed to go to my first U.S. Nationals and stole an excavator. Uh, yeah, that nearly derailed my entire race career because we got we got caught.
Well, I mean, I was gonna say you can't. I mean, just was that it? Was that the end of the
No,
story? Was like
no.
it was? Was there a precursor to that?
I obviously had been infatuated with machines since I was a very young kid. And I quickly learned that most big contractors leave their keys in their machines. So we're at the age 16 years old where we have driver's license, and we're also pretty much up to no good. And for whatever reason, the idea got kicked up, probably from me, to, hey, let's go see if we can find some machines with keys in it. Not, hey, let's go rip down a building, but let's go fuck with machines. And at this point, Breckinridge is starting to do some massive developments, and they're building the Highlands neighborhood. There is more iron up in this neighborhood than we knew what to do with. We're walking around, we find the machines, and we start climbing all around them. And I mean, I found keys to scrapers. I found keys to massive excavators. I found keys to D9s. I found keys to everything. But I didn't trust my friends to be around something that large. I mean, I don't know why I trusted myself either. I had seen them, but I've never been in anything at that point of that size. I'd sat in them, but never turned them on. So I was kind of scared. But we found keys to what's probably the equivalent of like a 308 mini excavator. Turn it on, full well forgetting that there's a neighborhood directly next door to where we are, and there's a pile of rocks. If any one of the cops that would have shown up could have seen us, what we were actually doing when we were doing it, they would have probably taken us home thinking that our parents were our chaperones and that we shouldn't be out of sight based on usually we should probably have mittens attached to our jackets. Because I was sitting in the excavator picking up rocks that had fallen away from the said rock pile and putting them back into the rock pile. We weren't tearing anything up. And I was the fucking happiest person. Like, it was the first time that I could start fucking around in a machine. I'd watched guys operate for years. I mean, when I was a little kid, I shit you not, I would ride my bike to job sites. And, parents, my dad specifically, like, if you get close enough to get hit by the machines, you're a fucking idiot. Stay away from them. Okay. I would go watch guys operate for hours. And I would sit there watching them pull the levers, trying to figure out what they were doing and what controls did what. Did I ever figure anything out? No, but I knew the levers did shit. So here's my opportunity to start literally figuring out, what is this machine going to do? It's got a thumb. I'm picking up these rocks. We weren't playing in this thing for probably more than 10 minutes. And about a half a mile down the road, we see headlights turn up the road. Just like, we literally got caught with our pants down. Like, there was no bullshitting that. And I think that's what made the situation worse, is that the two other guys one of them pinned it on me, which probably was my decision. So I end up getting charged with unlawful use of someone else's property and trespassing. I have court date. We go home that night. My parents go to your room. We're not going to Utah tomorrow. You fucked up royally. You literally just you just made a decision tonight that it might affect the rest of your high school career. And racing had just become a very big thing in my life. And I just realized that I just potentially kicked myself in the dick. And, the next morning I woke up early. We were supposed to be on the road to Utah. And I called my coach. Hey, Roy, I fucked up with last night. I stole an excavator. He starts fucking laughing his ass off. And he's like, okay, I'm going to call your parents. So I hand I give the parents my phone, and, my coach calls them. And he convinced them that I needed to go race nationals. He said, Kevin's at that age right now where he's fast, but he can get onto the radar of national teams if he starts doing well from 16 on. And, so my parents come up to my room. They said, pack the fucking car. I'm like, what? We're going? And I got dropped off with a teammate, another kid that I grew up racing with in Summit County. And I rode out with him. I didn't want to be around my parents. And by the time we got to Utah, my parents rode out there with my coach and another parent. And they weren't stoked. They weren't stoked because I had to go to court, but they were laughing. And I came to find out what they were fucking laughing at was when my dad was a very young kid, he stole all his neighbors' lawnmowers.
Oh, no way.
So when they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I was like, you guys can't be mad at me. I was just doing what I love. And Dad, you stole lawnmowers, and look at you. You're a superintendent of a golf course. So obviously this is going to pan out great for me.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that was definitely the analogy that were you really drawing on that comparison when you were talking to your parents? Like, hey, it's all good. Like, Dad, you stole lawnmowers. I totally stole an excavator. Don't worry about it. I'm going to be a professional operator at some point in time.
You might be surprised, but I definitely tried that.
Nice.
And I don't really know how well that worked. But so we're in Utah, and the rule, okay, he knew the company that had those machines, Stan Miller. And he said, I know Kurt and Kermit very well. I used to know their dad. And you need to go apologize when we get back. He's like, I have worked with those guys. They helped, my dad when they were building the new 9. And it's a small town. That's the whole thing. Everyone fucking knows everything. So my parents wanted me to cover up or clean up my mess. And I said, okay, I raced nationals. I podiumed every fucking race, which was bananas. I didn't race at that level. I was racing locally in Colorado, but I had never done a nationals race. And I podiumed in the time trial, in the crit, and in the road race, my first year ever racing nationals. That skyrocketed cycling for me, and it didn't put the idea of machines on the background or on the back burner, but we get back to Colorado, and I'm not pursuing machines at this point, but I go in and apologize to the owner of the company. And I told him the entire story. The cops had not informed him that we had stole one of his machines. And he just blatantly, after I thought this guy, like, I was like, oh, he's going to kick my ass. I stole his machine. I have to go into his office. He just looked at me and said, you like running machinery? I'm like, yeah, it's pretty dope. Like, but I want to race bikes for a while. He's like, okay, well, when you want a job, come back. And I was like, wait, what? I stole one of your machines. He's like, yeah, but most kids that are 16 are getting drunk in Publix, or like 16-year-olds don't steal tractors because they're seriously just interested in tractors. And he offered me a job, and that stuck with me for a while of, I ended up working for him for about just over around 2 years. I ended up working with Stan
So
Miller.
full circle, just everybody that's listening right now, full circle. Kevin stole an excavator and has ultimately landed himself a job. Is that a correct statement?
That's pretty much what happened.
Like in a roundabout, inadvertent way. Holy shit, man!
I wouldn't suggest it. I think from Marvin Haymeyer, that whole stealing of well, he didn't steal it, but he's the guy that bulldozed Granby. Probably don't want to go joyriding machines anymore.
Yeah, it's not like you're. No. It's definitely not like you're advocating for doing that. Neither am I. I'm just saying the story component is you literally just one night decided to do something. You thought it was funny. You realized it was a fuck up. And then it's now come full circle when you went to go apologize.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I think it's that time. I think we got to do a special guest question. And the special guest question today is kind of along the same lines of what you were just talking about with help. And it's from Elliot Cohn. I'll play it now.
Yo, buddy. Kevin, some quality people have invested in you and your career. My question today is, how are you going to pay it forward in the future? Talk soon, bud.
Papa. Holy shit. Yeah. Like I said, I'm a product of my environment. I wouldn't be where I am without the opportunities that I've been given or worked for. What am I going to do? I'm going to do what was done for me. I'm not going to shut doors on people. I'm not going to close them out. It's a very small niche of what the machine world is. The dick measuring contest of, oh, I did this, eat fucking shit. Like, everyone has challenges. Everyone has different areas. The resorts, everything across the United States, Europe, Canada, they're all fucking different. Australia, like, they're all different. And when we put up these barriers of, well, I did this and you did this, let's go get a measuring tape. Fuck that. And I'm in a position that I have the availability to pass on that knowledge. And I learned the hard way. I was around that old school mentality in some aspects of, fuck you, I had to learn this, go figure it out yourself. But then I was also taught an entire different realm of what the machine world can be by Mark and Nick and Elliot. I mean, the list of people that have assisted me to where I'm at, that's the least I can do is be that person. I'm not that old, but there is younger operators. There is hands down people in cats tonight that are in their teens. They're fucking getting their feet wet. And I will help someone the most I possibly can, because that's what was done for me.
Yeah, man, that's a tough question to answer, and shout out to Elliot for definitely contributing to the podcast. For anybody that doesn't know Elliot Cohn, legend in the industry, legend in the terrain park world, but legend as a human being.
That man has been an absolute staple in my life. I mean, I met Elliot when he was coming to do tour, before I even was a blick on the radar, and the way that he held himself. And he and I talk regularly about not work. I mean, what he has helped me through, I owe that man. I mean, he is truly a figure that I look up to. I mean, not only do I call him Papa, as he is also of the Ginger Descent.
Yes, he is. He's a day walker. Welcome.
One U.S. Open, I cut my facial hair and got the exact same outerwear and hung headphones out of my jacket, and I came in looking exactly like Papa, and I sat next to him. There's a photo rolling around.
You got to get that
somewhere.
photo. I'm going to throw it out there. We got to get that photo and put it out there on social media.
Landon
Taylor hit us up with that photo.
I guarantee it's an amazing one, but what that guy has done for me, I'm forever grateful. So thanks, Elliot.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Cohn. That was awesome. Along the lines of seriousness, we had a laugh for sure, but like your career as a cyclist, as a bike dude, was pretty profound. Like it was like you traveled all over the world. I'm going to call it that. You traveled all over the world. You went across the pond, so that might as well be the other side of the world. Different country, different environment. You were 18 years old doing your thing, but you had a moment in life that was kind of a character building moment as you define it. And it was a pretty bad crash, man. It was gnarly. Like you had a really bad accident. And what was the reset and how did you get back on the saddle? What was that?
Oh man. And that was that first trip to Europe. It was the beginning and honestly the sort of a tipping point where my focus of cycling, but I don't remember the crash entirely. I don't know if the full details of that. I could go on for weeks about stories from the hospital and everything else, but I got clipped, front wheel taken out at 50 miles an hour and landed on my face.
Damn.
I mean, fork broken off my bike. Literally first thing that hit the ground was my face. Don't remember a thing of it. And I am happy about that. It changed everything in my life at that point in a blink of an eye. My perspective of what do I want to do? Do I want to keep doing it? I mean, I don't know if death was close, but I spent a week and 6 or 7 days in a hospital by myself where no one spoke English. I mean, my face was wrapped in bandages for a couple of days. I didn't have any idea of what was going on with me. I had no idea that I had a massive head injury. I had no idea that I had broken collarbone. I had no idea that ribs were, my entire body was littered in stitches, most of which that is where I came out of my head injury. And I had 80 plus stitches in my face put in with no numbing medicine.
Damn.
That moment right there, it gives me shivers, but dude, my tolerance for pain is through the fucking roof. And I knew I could push hard anyway. I had that before I crashed. That was what I was really good at, was hurting. But what immediately changed was the direction of where I was going in life. Unfortunately, that was the beginning of the end for my passion with road racing. I wasn't scared to go fast again. I went back home to the States. I had to wait about 2 weeks before I could fly home because of all my stitches. Went home, collarbone healed, ribs healed, stitches, holes closed up, and I was back on my bike. And I was back in Europe about 7 weeks later. And I was there for 3 days. I was there for 3 days because I was mentally fucked. I wasn't in it. I was fitness. I was fast still, but everything in life had just shifted drastically where I didn't know if I wanted to be a part of that anymore. Racing road was a very strict life. You got to monitor your diet. You literally ride your bike 6-7 hours a day. You don't do anything else. I am not a full introvert. I hit that box of introvert, extrovert, but I also want to enjoy what I'm doing, and sitting around a house with teammates watching Tour de France replays was not on my to-do list at that point. So I got sent back home to Colorado. The national team just straight up said, "Hey, take the rest of the year off. You went through a little little bump in the road there, buddy.
Yeah, you went through some heavy shit. Go recoup a little bit more.
You know, and they were giving me an opportunity to figure out what the hell I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had kind of started being involved with heavy equipment at that point a little bit. I had a boss that would allow me to race. I mean, I would literally come home, work for enough to make some money, and then go on the road racing again. But equipment was never on the radar. It was straight up cycling. But after that wreck, everything changed. I continued to race road for another 2 years, and then that love just straight went out the window. I had a professional contract signed, and they told me I couldn't ski and I couldn't mountain bike because I could get hurt. And you can't put that against me after I ripped my face off at 50 miles an hour. I mean, the worst I had ever been hurt was racing road bikes. I went down 3 times and 3 times only in my entire career racing road. There's guys that crashed 3 times in one fucking race. Like it didn't happen to me. And that one wreck changed everything for me. So I go back to Breck. You know, I'm at this point trying to figure out what the fuck I'm going to do. I don't want to go back to Fort Lewis. College was fun for what it was, but I didn't have a career in mind. And I was very open with my parents about, I'm not going to go to college to simply go to college. And they had, fully supportive of that. They knew that I enjoyed running machines. They knew that there is careers running machines. You can make decent money. And my biggest thing was I could be happy running machines. I was straight up that little kid in the sandbox again. So I go back to H&F Excavation and enter Mark Dagler, Nick Simon, Rockin' Rickson, 3 guys that ran cats at Breckinridge. And Nick had worked for my father at one point, knew who I was. And at this point in snowcats, you had to know someone to get a job. You had to know someone to get offered a position. I called Gary and, you don't really have any experience. I'm like, no shit. I'm 18 years old. Like, who's got experience in snowcats at this point?
Yeah.
I've been around machinery. I understand how to run machinery. And I want to do this. It was literally the first time that I was like, all right, let's see where this goes. Let's see where machines can go. And so I started begging these guys, Mark and Nick and Rockin', hey, help get me a job. And when I was it 18 or 19, I got offered a position on swings, which was also unknown. I knew the right people. One of the other guys on swings, Joe B. Neal, I grew up with his son racing Nordic, and they helped get me a position running cats. And that right there, because I knew who Mark and Nick were. Nick was fucking half pipe. Mark was freeway. I was in such good company from an early age where these guys, I learned amazing skills where, I didn't learn shit habits from operators. I was in these machines with these guys a bit, but they saw that I was interested. They saw that I was driven to go to snowcats, and that's, without them, who knows? But here I am, and I got offered a position to start running a snowcat.
I want to jump right now into the push road question of the day. And for those listening right now, the push road question of the day is something that you can contribute to yourself. You can send us a direct message via Instagram, via Twitter, via Facebook. You can send us an email on the website, thebladedive.com. They can be funny, they can be hilarious, but they can be broad. I think that's the point. So everybody wants to contribute, and I'm just making an effort as best I can to answer them in the order that they are received. And so I think without further ado, I'll roll the intro, Kevin, and we'll get right into it.
The push road question of the day.
That's right. The push road question of the day. I'm kind of biased to the intro too. Happy-go-lucky, uplifting. I love it. Can't help but make you smile when you hear that. I will say that the push road question of the day comes from Mark D, your boy, from Breckinridge. Here it is. You ready?
What's up, Blade Dive? Mark D here. Zollers, couple things for you. Good employees versus good operators. And a Park Pro with tinted glass. Could you elaborate? Thanks, buddy.
What's up, Dagler? Good employees versus good operators. That was something I heard down the line, and that was an unfortunate thing of where I was beginning to lose interest for working for Breckinridge. I was a big advocate, once again, that you could keep employees if you paid them like the simple request of what employees were looking for. And, you know, it was at a time where there was not turmoil, but there was people digging their heels in, and I was a part of it. And it was literally passed down the line of, we need good employees and not good operators. And I lost a lot of respect for the department when I heard that it solidified that I was a fucking number. Eat shit and die. Like, that's just a fucking terrible thing to say, but you want someone that says yes versus someone that knows what they're doing. That's ass backwards and wrong. The Black Betty, the tinted window. It was an amazing cat.
Black Betty?
Black Betty. That was a SPT cat, and that's the one that I had a bit at Detour, had it a little while at X Games for a while. I think it was given to me mostly because of the tinted windows, the fact that they're like, oh, wow, Kevin, you get out of your cat a lot and have to put on sunscreen all the time. Why don't you run this cat with tinted windows? I'm like, this is fantastic. Turns out, flat white. It was amazing when it was bluebird out. Oh, dude, I could nuke around. No one was seeing me in the cat. Wasn't getting sunburnt. It was fantastic. Enter flat white. You couldn't see a thing out of that window. But you're also driving a murdered out snowcat. So, and with the Park Pro, it's got that subwoofer in there. It was pretty fucking badass.
I've been actually going the Mike Bonnell with no music. I've been going that route for a minute. It's been cool. I've enjoyed that. And I got to say, legend in the game, Mark Dagler, thank you so much for contributing. That was truly awesome. So thank you. You know, Kevin, I think one of the coolest components is that we've talked about where you came from, how you grew up, what you were around, who were the just amazing people that helped shape your career, from your family to the impactful individuals that were already moving dirt or snow. But you were given an opportunity to jump in a snowcat, like you described. And you are one of the few guys that came from the trails background or the Alpine background that jumped over into park builds. And having been from both sides, who do you think is harder on the machine?
Well, I know who that finger is often pointed at. Unfortunately, park guys are the usual recipient of that award of, oh, they always break shit. And I am hands down, feet down, ass down, going to argue that one, that they're doing things with machines and parks that put them at their limits on a nightly basis. The contours, the pushing, everything is a higher level of stress. So inherently, yes, there is more mechanicals, but who is harder on machines? Have you seen a pack of rookies go by and tillers bouncing off of trees? Because I have. And that is even with being on trails for 9 years, 10 years if you include Utah, Alta, but the park guys always got the bad look. And I disagree with that entirely. It's just a different style of operating, and they're different. And yes, there are things that break more, but people want to make them look bad. Oh, they're just doing this shit and they have no idea what they're doing. But, you know, specifically at Breck, those guys pop their tillers off all the damn time when they're pushing. You know, I'm not saying that there wasn't good guys on trails, but inherently the cats got abused a hell of a lot more when they're outside the terrain parks. and they were definitely focused on anytime that things happen in the park. And I don't agree with that one at all. So I'm saying trails are harder. I mean, just straight up driving over rocks, breaking grousers, hitting trees. I mean,
as far as just like creating opportunities for yourself, man, like I want you to speak to both the dirt world and the snow world, but obviously I'm kind of biased. I'm more interested in the dirt world because the shit that you do in the Spider is amazing. But I want you to speak to both, like creating the opportunity. You know, what's your take on that with respect to just equipment skill set versus earning it? And are they the same thing? And do you think politics get in the way?
Man, there's so many variables with, I mean, obviously
It's a loaded
both
question.
industries and skill sets. Dirt, you know, I had opportunities pretty early on. I wasn't in machines all the time. Like I was running a fucking D1 a lot, but I was around really good operators, really savvy guys learning. From a labor perspective, there was guys that I liked being around, and there was other operators that I fucking hated because I had to shovel a shit ton. So I learned from learning how to shovel which guys I like to be on, and I would pick up their characteristics. So, you know, back to Mark and Nick, those guys, I wasn't kicking them out of machines. There's no way in hell. I was starting to get into excavators. You know, I worked for a company that I had a boss that gave me, it was ample opportunity, and he would not push back at me saying, hey, I want to learn how to run the motor grader. I mean, I started running a motor grader when I was 21, which is, most people that do that are far older. It's a very complex machine, and I was drawn to those hard machines. Not that I was bored with just conventional digging but fucking sitting on a roller. No, I was too educated for that. I needed more stimulation. So I was very grateful. You know, I was lucky early on that I worked for a guy, Jay Armstrong, you know, gave me a lot of opportunities based on that. He needed people that could operate. And he actually kind of had a pretty good, you know, anyone that has an operator that's 18, 19, 20, they have the ball in their court. These kids don't have experience. So you're not having to pay them, not yet, what a skilled blade hand is worth. But if you have a kid that is willing to learn this, that is someone that you can invest in. And I would show that intuitiveness, like, shit, I want to learn how to run this. And, you know, a guy that was teaching me how to run a motor grader, like, dude, I remember the first time I got in there, I was fucking the antler rack, just pulling everything. I was so overwhelmed, and he just simplified it. And, you know, I had guys that were around me that saw that I wasn't just trying to sit in a machine, but I truly wanted to learn what they could do. And I was very fortunate that I had guys that took me under their wing and realized that if they teach me a little bit, that I would take workload away from, like, off of them, where I could do more things. And, you know, so we start getting into heavy excavation. I'm doing residential. I enjoyed residential. I wasn't a big fan of stab and sewer. You're tapping into live sewer. It's gross, but it's a necessary part. It's a business that'll always be there. Rock walls, fucking loved them. It's a slower process, but you got to be an artist. I went to more of a civil background where, you know, I was a part of expansions at ski areas running fucking D8s and big ass machines. And this is a more organic feel. It was, I was, my first probably 5-6 years of machines was figuring out what the machine could do. And then after that point, I wanted to try every aspect of, especially excavation, to figure out which one I enjoyed the most. You know, Mark, still to this day, is one of the most savvy pipe. There's no way to say it without laughing. Mark lays a good pipe. And so fucked. But, you know, he enjoys that. He enjoys digging around utilities. He's very fucking good at it. I can do it. It's not my favorite being around utilities, and it's a slower pace at times. Yes, you're hogging, but what I started to learn was that I liked shaping. I liked shaping very early on, where yes, you are still following plans more so in the dirt world than you ever will, especially grooming trails. Trails is completely organic, and I would bring everything that I was skiing into the cat with me. This roller sucked. Oh, this compression is awful. These fucking ruts are terrible. I was continually trying to learn, and that didn't stop with the machines. Where I remember when I first saw a spider, I was working on Peak 6 at Breckinridge for Stan Miller, the company I stole the excavator for. And this thing came crawling by. Fucking mind blown when I saw this thing, what it was doing. There was literally no footprint. And as hypocritical it is to say, I thoroughly enjoy the impact or lack thereof of what a spider can do. You can go into completely sensitive areas with a mechanical advantage and complete tasks that are usually done by hand. And I was blown away at the capabilities of the machines. And it was simply that I wanted to learn how to run them. I needed a continuous stimulation. I was starting to get bored with slinging dirt. You can only load a truck so fast. And I think that's where the machine world has been such a good one for me, is that there's so many different aspects of it. And I enjoy most of them because you can switch it up. It's not the same process every single day. And that's what really drove me to the spider excavators. Was they do incredibly nasty things. There's someone sitting inside there. They're getting paid pretty damn well, and there's not a lot of them around.
Yeah, and the hard part about that too, I feel like for most people, is that there's a bit of a validation component where you're going, oh yeah, man, I got to prove myself. I got to put myself out there. I'm going to go run something. I got to run something more difficult. And what's interesting is that you're really dissecting something that, I think is very prevalent, is that I've always felt like that people are quick to judge, and they're never really going to look at the whole picture. They're always going to go, oh yeah, couple year operator, rookie operator, half-ass, average shit, whatever it may be. But there's always this kind of like, I'll just call it the blame, claim, and shame shit, where it's like, oh, you did it, oh, she did it, oh, he did it, all this shit and all this finger pointing that's going on. It's just bullshit. Like, all that stuff is just bullshit. Like, when you break it down, ultimately, like, at a teachable moment, you've got the opportunity as a leader to be like, okay, you fucked up. Here's what happened. Here's how we fix it. Here's how you can fix it next time it happens. All right, cool. And then if you do it again, we'll have a different conversation. That's the teachable moment right there. Boom, and done, and move on. Like, there's no reason to sit there and go, you boom, 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 and you're basically pounding that person's head in the sand and going, you fucked up, you fucked up, you fucked up. Like, there's no reason to do that. That at that point, you have left the leadership corner. Like, you have literally gone into, like, I will be the authoritarian mode, Like, kudos to you for being just savvy enough to go, okay, know what I'm running into. I'm going to figure this out on my own. So dope, dude.
And the ability, and this is where you start getting into those upper tiers of operating, but the ability to problem solve. That's the biggest question I get asked with specifically spiders. Some of the shit that I've done in winches is, how do you know how to do this? I'm like, I fucking don't. But when I get to that scenario, I know how to problem solve. I know how to think. Do I get it right every time? No, there's always unforeseen circumstances. But what I do really well with is my gut reaction, thinking on a fly. That is something that I've always done very well with in problem solving. That split second decision, especially with spiders, where you are in a fucked precarious position. You just snapped an anchor. I had this happen recently. and sitting at 48 degrees, and that machine took off downhill. My boom was uphill above me. You want to see your asshole eat a seat? I mean, you and I were talking a little bit then, and how quick
we were.
You have to react. And like I was saying, like I consistently think about those consequences all the time. You cannot go into those machines and doubt that. You have to hold respect for the absolute worst case scenario, because when you do not do that, that is when that shit happens. And that is when either someone's getting a call that I'm gone, or, you know, worst cases, they're terrible. You know, I don't like to dwell on it, but what is my out? If this thing snaps, what am I going to do? And that's a difference of some people are like, well, that's a pessimistic way to think of worst case scenario. I'm like, yeah, but it's also realistic, because when it happens, having that in the back of your head, already knowing that I need to fucking spin, lower legs, and I mean, you're hoping at that point that ass end was light enough where if my boom was any higher, yeah, it would have been fucking awful. You would have read about me in the paper, but I knew what I had to do and fucking sat there in the machine and took some deep breaths and attached to a different anchor, you know, went over the whole machine. Things was fine. Chalk it up. Nothing happened. No one started losing their shit, you know, the finger pointing game. No, I'm not going to have that. And that's not going to solve the issue either. How do you move on from here? What did you learn? I learned a lot, you know, and that's a consistent thing that I will always do with machinery is you have to learn from your mistakes. If you do that same shit all the time, sorries no longer work. Sorries only mean something if you actually truly are trying to change it.
Yeah, if you're only truly trying to change something, I feel like if your sorries are only there if you know that it was really a fuck up. That's kind of, apologies are there for a reason. Right. Thank yous, I feel like, are harder. I feel like people are really good at saying sorry, and they're very bad at saying thank you. I do, however, I have a special guest question for you. You know the gentleman, it's your brother, Dan Soller.
Danny.
Yep, Dan Soller. He is has been awesome enough to contribute to the podcast episode, and so for that, Dan, huge shout out. Thank you so much. And he's got a couple questions for you, so I'm going to play all of them, and we'll go from there. So here is question number 1.
Kevy, my bro. Everybody wants to know not just how you got into the spider hoe business, but how you got into machines and the whole operator business to begin with. I remember being real young when we used to go to the park in Dillon, and they had the little excavator machine, and Kev would get on it and be such a little dick and not let anybody else touch it because he wanted to move the sand and do things his own way. And that progressed into the first time he got in trouble with the cops and stealing machines to turn it into the job it is now. And I was wondering how that all progressed, or why you've loved machines from the start, and how you got into that love of building and sculpting and creating the machine art.
Danny, love you, buddy. Yeah, he witnessed it all. I mean, and he's not bullshitting there. These parks that had the little toy diggers, you know, the ones that are stationary, you sit on it, and dude, I would go to these parks and there was no other kid that was getting on that tractor. I would take it like a job. I don't know why. I think I was just blown away what my little hands could do, and put that into a bigger scale with heavy machinery. The possibilities with machines are endless. And I think I was just sucked in with the capabilities of what machinery could do. Beyond that, I mean, I just straight up was blown away what the power of a machine could do. And I had to figure out how to do it.
And the coolest part about it all is that, like, you've let us in on a little bit of that. And, you know, the scope of what you were trying to achieve, I feel like, at a very young age, through just the theft of something and what you got in trouble for, and then transforming that into a career based on just being, you know, honest with yourself, you know, like the conscious moment that you had, kind of that revelation of like, okay, I got hurt. I like machines. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to see what happens. And look at you now. I do have 2 more questions from Dan, and I'm going to roll with both of them because both of them are pretty cool. So here's question number 2.
Kevin, my bro. You're the driver of machines, and everybody wants to know what drives you and what makes the Kevin tick.
Oh, fucking asshole.
Yeah, that's a deep one. You could say
right, like, oh, what makes me tick? Hell if I know.
That's a solid answer. If you can stick with that one, I'm fine with that. But elaborate if you want to.
I think we'll just go with that. Fuck it.
Cool. I love it. Question number 3 from Dan.
Kevin, and I guess this even goes for Parker as well. You two of you can discuss as gingery. I don't know how the best way to represent people, but why does being a ginger equate to being awesome?
Well, it's in fact it's a little bit of science there, Danny. We are known to have the skin of royalty, pale. We are a smaller percentage with the red hair, and we are just destined for greatness. And we usually have fiery attitudes. And there's other details about gingers, specifically males, that are gifted that I don't want to like go into full detail on, but.
I'm gonna answer it too. I love that he included me for the response. I was stoked. Selfishly. Dan, to answer your question completely 100% from just a full transparency perspective, we're daywalkers. Get it right. We're not gingers.
We are daywalkers, Danny. Yeah, because I mean, there's not freckles on me.
That's what I'm going to live and die by. I'm a daywalker, and that's what makes us special and amazing and gingeritis-y badass daywalkers. No, big shout out to Dan. Like Dan, that was big. So thank you so much. Kevin, I know you have a super close, like your relationship with your brother is special. And I don't mean that from just trying to take away from it. I mean that from a family is of the utmost importance. And at the end of the world, if it were all to dissolve, that's kind of who you're left with. If you're all alone, that's unfortunate. But if you do have the family with you right there by your side as a component, then man, the relationship with them is just, that's priceless. So I know that you treasure the relationship with your family. It's super important to you and your brother as well. Can you elaborate on that at all? I know you guys are definitely tight.
We went through moving was hard. We moved up to Montana at a very young age where we had to go meet friends. But I had my brother. Our family was close. We did, my brother followed my dad with the basketball. My mom was the more Nordic racer, but biking was something that our family did. And I mean, as long as I can remember, that was a sport that we all did together. And that was just it. You said it. Like, without them, I've bumped around a lot. I've been all over the place. I have friends everywhere, but they're my only family. They've been supportive on every endeavor of my life. They've picked me up through some pretty nasty lows. They're family, and I'm very grateful that they're still around. And it's something that it's hard to think about. My brother got paralyzed. Coming up on 3 years this year, and Danny and I got insanely close. Before that was cycling. He was getting back into it. His basketball didn't pan out the way he wanted. It's similar to my road racing. And, I was always traveling with work. I was running heavy machinery. It was hard for me to come visit all the time. He was in Grand Junction at this point with my family. My parents were over there, but he and I would still link up once in a while to ride bikes. And it's some of the most defining moments of just freedom and fun of my life, that literally giggling. And when he got hurt, I cried like a little fucking bitch, selfishly thinking that wasn't going to happen again. 6 months after Danny got paralyzed, I was riding bikes with him in Frisco, Colorado. He was on his hand trike, and through thick and thin, through ups and downs, they have always been supportive. And I can only do the same for them. I owe them everything. Without them, I have nothing. And I love that we have the common bond of cycling. I have a video on, it's one of the most surreal things where he's riding one wheel on his tricycle. It's just insane, the skill that this kid has. He's my older brother. I mean, he's so much bigger than I am, physically and mentally. The shit that he puts up with, it makes me look at my perspective of life. And I'm grateful for everything that we have. I'm grateful that I am this close with my brother. It's family. I guess I'm just grateful. I'm kind of lost for words for putting it into context of what they mean to me, but they mean the world.
I'm not trying to detract from the accident whatsoever. But I maybe it is like a 2-part question, a little bit of a curveball. Who you are, and Kevin, Dan brought that up. Dan asked you that question, Kevin, and I thought that was pretty broad, and it's hard, like as you mentioned in the answer to that question, like, this is it. This is who I am. But I want you to kind of peel back that a little bit, and whether it starts like your pre-bike career in high school, or your bike cycling career at 18 and beyond, but kind of that high school, that younger age era to now, like, who are you, and what are you? I know there are highs and lows, but like, let us in on that. Like, who are you as an individual?
Well, man, high school, lady killer, super buff. No one fucked with me at all. Calm, quiet, are nothing that would have ever described me ever.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
I
was.
I got along with everyone. I've always had an uncanny ability to make people laugh, right? But I would agree. I didn't know how to fit in with people. I was incredibly talented aerobically, and I wouldn't get made fun of. Our ski team was the fucking best in the state. We won states 3 out of 4 years. But Summit County as a whole, it was a super athletic high school. So everyone got along, right? And I didn't always fit in. And it's hard looking back on some of that, where, I was scatterbrained with school, like itself. I either did really well, or I didn't give a shit. I needed a reason as to why I needed to learn something. I loved sciences that made sense to me. Art was always good. Obviously, that's lunch. Like, dude, I crushed lunch. Like, that was probably my favorite. I wish they gave grades for that. They didn't.
You and I both.
But things like math, awful, fucking awful. I could never get teachers to explain why I needed to know calculus. Well, one day you might be an engineer. I'm like, nope, fucking hate math. Not going to do that. Like, well, you never know that. No, I think I actually do. If I don't like something, I'm not going to pick a career in that. It was a turning point where I started to have teachers realize that I needed sometimes special draw of, I wasn't in learning education or learning assistance classes or whatever it's called, but I had one teacher in specific in English that could see that I would lose interest in just the common topic of writing a book report on Macbeth or whatever the hell it was. And Mr. Smith, big shout out to you. If you ever hear this, you're still one of my favorite teachers of all time. He saw that I had to learn in a different way, where he had to make me interested in it. So where everyone else was told, you need to write this, he introduced me to creative writing. And that is a side of me that there's definitely a lot of people that don't understand that. I fumble with words, but I'm articulate. I think about things consistently. I'm intellectual. I jump around with humor a lot, but the creative writing for me skyrocketed this idea that you can make something that's simply benign as writing a book report and make it exciting. As of recent, I wrote some haikus. I don't know if they're not normal haikus. I don't know if you want me. I wrote one for you.
Oh, read it. Come on, read it.
It's titled Blade Dive. Carefree stick jiggler, false sense of ample snow tricks, blade dive, dirt exposed.
I feel like that's spot on.
It's how it happens. You sit there, you're like, oh, there's so much, oh, fuck dirt.
Yeah, man, that's, I wanted to publicly just say that, like, that's an honor. The fact that you took the time to fucking sit down and write that from an operator standpoint and just think of it from the perspective of a blade dive and then read it on the show. Like, that's the shit.
You bet, man.
Like, that's fucking awesome, man. Thank you.
Well, and for me, it's something that's written. It's literally in a book of shit that I've written down that I have this book now so I can look back and read it. And
this is so cool. Like, the fact that it's there and you're willing to reference it and read it, like, on the show, that's just awesome. I love it.
Writing has continued. I take it to work. I mean, I have notebooks full of the events I've worked, what needs to be done. I wrote all that shit down so I wouldn't forget it. So I could either back up that it was not conveyed. Hey, you didn't tell me about this. Yeah, we did. No, I wrote all this stuff down. But mostly I needed a reminder, but it helped keep me organized. And that's something that I have carried throughout my entire work career. I've got excavation books. I've got project books. That's something that I've started doing, is documenting specifically with some of the rowdy stuff that I've done, things that I've done, just so, if there is that day where I can't remember shit, I can look back and be like, I built that lift. I built that comp park. I built, I'm not trying to look that far ahead that I'm going to need help remembering everything, but it's pretty cool that I have literally a box full of shit that I can open up and see where I was at that point in my life. And I can also see the character that I was in my life at that point. And that all grew from those high school times.
I think just to kind of break things up too, along the lines of that, it's important to kind of laugh, right? We've definitely talked about that for sure. And what you're all about there too, which is, I think, a great segue into our last special guest question, and that is from Mr. Nick Simon. So I'll play it now.
Hey, little buddy, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. You're probably dangling off a cliff somewhere in Glenwood Springs on your spider excavator. Stay safe, my friend. My question today is about two objects. The first object is something that you brought to Breckinridge a long time ago. We sent this object down groomers, down the pipe, off the finish area, off jumps, and I can't even remember what else we sent it off. Could you please tell us about that object? And the second object is something we sent off the final jump at the U.S. Open last year after a really hard day's work, and we all needed a pretty good laugh and blow off some steam. And that one little simple object really made our night. So if you could tell everyone about those two objects, I think everyone would get a little smile out of it. You take care, my friend.
Oh, Nick, hi, buddy. It's damn good to hear your voice. And yep, hits me right with the little buddy. Told you, been around. Oh, the first one. That was my first year grooming. I don't know why I had a bowling ball. But I had a bowling ball. I brought the bowling ball up on the final night. And I started at the top of the mountain, sending this thing down ski runs. Probably looking back, not a very smart idea. At the time, was amazing. This thing would take off on rollers. And dude, disappear, and you just see a tree 3/4 of a rundown start shaking. You're like, oh, there it is. We brought it into the park that night, back when freeway was still freeway. The 18-foot pipe at the bottom had a tire bonk at the bottom, and we built a little jump, and we're trying to shoot the gap into the tire. Never made it. I'm grateful that I was a part of those days. I got to see, a little bit of the cowboy points. Things were a little more free-spirited then. Passions were higher. People were able to have fun without so much scrutiny. We weren't fucking up. We weren't destroying anything, but things like that are definitely gone now, which is unfortunate. US Open, we had to park our cats at the top of the pipe with the event the next day, so we had to hike down. US Open finals on Saturday is pipe. It is, from a skier's perspective, one of the coolest events to be a part of. What Jake Burton did for the industry was, it's still insurmountable. And being there with Sam, Kylie, and Nick Simon, we had that, the adaptive pipe. And damn, those things are hard. They're things that have never been done, and we were getting our teeth kicked in. A 13-foot pipe on that degree to match into a 22 with hips. There's so many unknown circumstances, but it was our final night, and we did it. We tried absolutely as hard as we could. And we were coming down at the end of the day, and, Vail and end of March, things are warming up. So they've got salt out on the park. I didn't want to walk down, so I grabbed Carney. If you ever listen to this, I owe you a bag of salt. I grabbed a bag of salt and used it as a sled for a while. And then we got down to the final jump, and we were standing on the knuckle of the feature above it. We're curious what the trajectory of a bag of salt would do, and let it go. And it made it within about 7 feet of that knuckle, clearing that jump. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And it's stuff like that.
Wow.
Like those things that you're so mentally done. You're so tired. And that is a story that'll forever stick with me, is how hard you could hear us laughing in the middle of the night coming down. Oh, it was so amazing.
I had to. At some point, you probably there was this release of the bag. It was going, shh, down, and then you're going.
Oh, dude, it was dead silent. Sam and I were up top, and Nick was down on the deck, and Nick just started cackling his ass off because same. You can hear it. It's sliding down ice, and then it takes off, and you're like, "Holy fuck! It's still in the air." And then wham! We're like, "Oh fuck!" Oh, and doing things like that. It's the little things like that.
I do want to jump into your time, and we've already touched on it a little bit, but I want to know more about kind of like growing up in Breckinridge and the highlights that you will never forget, and maybe some of the moments that you don't really want to remember.
There was such a community at Breckinridge that, especially when I was a young kid, it was such a small town. And yes, that comes with its pros and cons, but it was a family, and it's family to this day. That I have a very massive family. Yes, I have my parents and I have my brother, but I'm very grateful for that extended family that I have. I'm in Reno now. I'm living here running Spiders, and I know a couple people, but it's not the same. And I enjoy thoroughly that going to the grocery store and you can talk to people. I mentioned that early on too, of just the endless adventures outside. I spent all my time outside. It was such a unique, amazing place to grow up. And unfortunately, it's not really that realm anymore. Ski towns for a long time were struggling with bringing people in, especially in the summers. And it's that field of dreams mentality. If you build it, they will come. And unfortunately, ski towns as a whole have changed dramatically. And that has changed things in a bunch of different realms. But, you know, there's a lot of people that look at living in a mountain as the most amazing, positive place in the world. But ski towns are one of the most oppressed areas. And I mean that in the phonetic word of, I am regretfully admitting that I've been to far too many funerals from suicide. You become numb after a while, and it's not because I hang out with shitty people, but the depressions that happen in mountain towns are substantial, and they're often put under the radar of people like, wow, why would you be upset? Why would you be sad? And the underlying circumstances that force people to do that, I don't understand. If I could have stopped any one of my friends that have done that, God damn, I would. But it's something that, you know, the highs are so high, but at the same time, you have a large community of people that are struggling financially, not sure where their next paycheck is. You know, they're there for the simplistic reason that they want to be a ski bum, but that life is a very challenging one where you are living now in a Ritz-Carlton among trailer parks where everything is financially more expensive. And I think one of the biggest things that's going to stick with me is a very unfortunate one about Breckinridge is getting evicted. That has changed my perception of my hometown in a negative connotation. And I'm grateful for where I am. I took that challenge and I ran with it. You know, I got back in the driver's seat and ran with it. But the way that whole thing happened, I was very fortunate. I lived in Gold Camp. It was a manager unit. It was cheaper than dirt. I was paying $425 a month, and this was until just last year. That is completely unheard of. My apartment was nothing special. Appliances were old as shit. You know, the place is as big as I wanted when I closed my eyes, but I lived by myself. And for what I was doing with work, traveling, working graveyards, doing comps where I was doing a month straight, a couple days off, and then another month, you know, I needed my own space. So I had that, and it kept me in that town. There was a buddy of mine who moved into another one of the Gold Camp owned units, and there's some upgrades that were done, and it got people's attention on the HOA of there was 3 apartments that they owned that were all paying less than $500. And that characteristic that those towns were turning into where they're being run by greed is what was the demise. These guys wanted to see how much they could charge for these apartments. So they would come in and do an appraisal. I was at X Games. They came into my apartment, unbeknownst to me, by the way, which was also fucking bullshit. But the way that I got this apartment, there was no lease. And it was you're on your word. And that is a trait that has changed drastically among ski towns, is that people, the weight of someone's word has changed. There's not a lot of people, unfortunately, that are in positions of power that understand what these towns were built on. And yes, there is without a doubt going to be change. I am not arguing that entirely. But what the line is when you go from raising rent to meet what the standard of what that rent should be for that apartment. Like I said, these places were built in the 70s. They weren't upkept. They were good for what they were. I mean, I had water leaks. They were fucking manager units at one point. And so I'm at X Games, and I got called that I had to be out immediately in 28 days because the 2 windows that I had in my apartment were not to standard fire code size. I was in good relations with the property manager. He gave me contact info for the head of HOA. It was someone that I knew. There's multiple people involved in the HOA, but there was a guy that I grew up with his kids, and I talked him out of it at first. I told him, hey, let's put bigger windows in. I got back from Aspen and had 7 or 8 days before I had to go to Vail for US Open again, thinking that I was going to have to move out. So I convinced them that kicking me out in the middle of the winter is just completely fucking insane. There was nowhere to live. I mean, mountain towns in general are already hard places to find living, especially in the middle of winter. It's impossible. So they had a slight sense of humanity for a brief second and said, okay, we'll work with you on this. We'll look at a window, but that's going to be really expensive. I'm like, okay, I'll help subsidize by literally doing all the interior work. So I stripped the entire inside of my apartment down to the concrete subframe. I went to the outside window in the middle, at the end of January, beginning of February, and dug fucking a 3-foot window well in frozen dirt by hand. I had just worked for, 5 weeks, and I was hoping to come home and just decompress before I had to go back onto the road for another month. And I spent that entire time getting my apartment ready for a new window. I went to Vail for US Open, and this is where the shit hit the fan, is that they went in to try and get a remodel permit for my apartment. And the building department at the town of Breck alerted them that there was not a unit of occupancy listed for that unit. And they quickly backpedaled. Said, oh, well, we got the wrong one. We'll figure it out. We'll get our ducks in order, and we're going to do a remodel on another apartment. They did that because they would have had to pay back property taxes for as long as someone rented that apartment. And there was someone in that apartment for at least 2 decades. I have no idea the numerical value of the back property taxes that would have been owed, but even with knowing one of the guys that was a part of that board for my entire life, instead of doing right, they literally, I had no foot to stand on without a lease. Yeah, pity me. That's not best case scenario. I went to lawyers. I had nothing I could do. And they straight up evicted me. And we got done with US Open. I had to move out. And had it been another week, that was when the COVID shutdowns happened. And I would have been able to stay and told them to fucking kick rocks. But I was out. And that was the final straw. I was so done with what those towns were turning into. I was financially all right. I could have afforded more. The reason that it provided so much animosity to me was I've done a very good job about not solely thinking about myself on these issues. There's so many friends, countless friends that are ingrained in this community that are stuck now. And I mean stuck because they have kids, they have a business, they have predetermined circumstances that I was a kid that moved. It's challenging. These people are trying to set up a life and they're getting cornered left and right with what the economy and essentially the housing market is doing. The average price of a home in Summit County right now is, I think, $1.2 million, which is fucking bananas. And then you go to that next question. Hey, what about not starting a guy running a $300,000 machine at $12 and pennies? Well, they get a free ski pass. You're not going to win this argument with me. You will not win. Oh, they get to live here. Do they? Because as far as I'm concerned, every one of these mountain towns is doing a very awful job about retaining employees. There's places that are doing better. Aspen is trying. They're at least trying. They don't just talk about it. And Summit County, that fucking consistent answer, well, we're looking into it. Fuck off. Fuck off. Do something. I'm so tired of people saying, oh, we're looking into it. Fucking, what? How is that an answer? That's not a no. That is not a no answer that is usable to me. When I provide countless amounts of, we could do this and this and this and this, and you just walk away, fuck yourself. And I will always call Breck home for the right reasons. Family, friends. Where I am in my life, in my career, is because of what has happened to me in that town. And I will never forget that. But I'm not going to be the last person that is ousted. You know, there was 2 other guys that were in those apartments. They didn't get evicted because their apartments window sizes were bigger. Their rent went from $425 to $1,400 without upgrades. That's fucking illegal. But the fact that there was no lease was that there was nothing that could be done. And that's fucked in my mind. If you do that shit, you're an awful fucking person. Sorry doesn't do anything at that point.
No, I don't think sorry does do much. I think when people are, I think of the word, when you use the word wait, or we're looking into it, or maybe, or we'll see, or let's table this, I feel like that is just the biggest component and piece of oppression that you could ever be dealing with. Because literally what that person is saying is, I don't care.
It's an okie dokie.
Yeah.
It's a polite fuck yourself.
Yeah, I don't care.
And you're like, cool.
Yeah, no, that's a heavy, thanks for sharing that. Like, that's a heavy topic. Like, the ability to be able to provide for yourself as a human being. It's kind of like the kid component, navigating the children, where it's not necessarily difficult to be a parent. It's almost more difficult to navigate other fucked up parents.
I can't even imagine.
Along the lines of, like, out of place, what's maybe the worst trend in ski resort practices currently, from your point of view?
This is a challenging one because this is where I have to check my personal life and what I would like to see skiing be. And that's been a hard one. That's one where I've had to grow a bit and understand that there needs to be other outlets. But one that I will not balk on is a sanitization of the skiing industry. And what I mean by that is not that skiing needs to be solely inclusive and that it's a very small group, but there is beginner terrain, there is terrain parks, there is advanced terrain, there is ski school terrain, there is fucking extreme terrain. And when you try to mix that shit, and this comes from personal experiences of those high Alpine runs at, the top of Breck, the top of Peak 6. They are not the steepest, but they're subjected to substantial amounts of wind. And we need to groom more because people need to be able to get down. And I said, I would argue that all the time. Well, why the fuck are they riding up a lift if they can't get down it? Well, they want to see the top of a mountain. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I do not agree with that entirely. And that right there has shifted entirely. I mean, there is outside circumstances, finances that affect what has gone on in parks, but losing terrain to bring them back, that you're essentially sanitizing a run. Freeway at Breckinridge is fucking gone. And that is just insane to me. That was a place that when I was in high school, I was hitting 60, 70 foot jumps, hitting roller coaster S rails that were unskirted. Yes, skirting around rails, got it, make it safer. But they brought that run back because, financially, yeah, it takes a lot of snow to make a terrain park. But there was also talk that it was needed for ski school. It was the perfect run to teach people on. It was 18 degrees and there was no fall line. There is 150 plus runs groomed at Breckinridge. Fuck off. Like, what's the line on that? Where do you stop? I'm not saying that people should be pushed away, but that's kind of the point of sport. You know, I had to deal with it with cycling. I had to deal with the skiing. Like me rock climbing, I want to climb Cap. That ain't fucking happening. I can barely do a pull-up. So they should blast that rock down and make it so I could walk up it? No. I just don't understand how that's ever been a subjectable answer in specifically the ski industry. Well, someone's got to be able to get down it. I don't agree with that. You know, you look at, unfortunately, places like Jackson Hole and Snowbird and Alta, these places that have had seen a bigger influx of intermediate skier that are getting themselves into fucked terrain where rope rescues, because people are getting themselves in over their head. And it's a real tight line to walk.
I do want to draw from your characters, but where did those come from, man?
Oh, I started homing in doing voices, running machines. I mean, I would mimic voices all the time when I was younger, but having that time in a machine to literally talk to I think other people talk to themselves, but I just found out that you can do it by yourself a lot. And I had different characters. Like, you know, obviously Mickey Mouse is a pretty good one, but I started trying to do people's voices when I was at Breck, specifically the head mechanic, Johnny Green. Well, cat's down, parts on order. And I quickly learned that I could do it over the radio and fuck with people. And there was another individual that it was for no reason, like it was not intentionally mean at all. You know, people start asking, why are you mimicking that voice? And they think it's in a negative context, but it's because I could mimic what they were doing. And there was a guy that I worked with, his name was Richard. And Richard was I don't even know what he did before he ran cats. He was retired. He's an awesome individual. I mean, he literally he did his dream at 60. I mean, he and I were rookies my same year. I was 18. He was, I think, 62. I could be wrong. But he had a very definitive voice. And I got on the radio one day because I knew what cat he was in. And I came on as Johnny Green. Shout to cat 843. And I immediately replied as Richard, knowing that Richard was in cat 843. And go for Richard. Richard queued up the radio. I was like, this is Richard. That wasn't Richard before. And dude, I just started fucking losing it. And that was the first time that I'm like, holy shit, I can fuck with people with voices. And from that, it just snowballed. I mean, Mickey, I have had full conversations. Just, welcome to the fucking blade dive. Don't fuck up tonight. And taking a voice that people know and then providing context that is definitely never going to be heard of out of that said voice is what is humorous to me. And, you know, otherwise, the millennial, it's literally entertaining myself. And I don't know why I need more entertainment when I'm sitting in a machine, but I have to talk to someone.
You know, the snow industry and those who are in it and know your story understand that you've had your highs and lows. Like you've brought that up. But those looking from the outside in through the lens of social media may see you as just kind of the comic with those voices and your experiences that you're describing through social media. But, you know, like I know that Charles brought up that, you know, social media is the best 5% that you'll ever get in your life. And that's just 5% of what's really happening. But who is, if you were to describe yourself in one word, Kevin Soller?
Oof. One word, I'm going calculated. That is probably going to make some people laugh that know me in one aspect. I'm pretty well aware of who to pander to. You know, there's a level of intelligence that most people miss with my ridiculous humor, that they don't understand that I don't talk like that all the time. I have to play a role with some of that shit, and I'm not making myself into be someone that I'm not. But especially with social media, like I put a little bit of emotion out there, but it doesn't fucking. I don't want to like pull back those layers from a random person. I would rather just be, the simple, make people laugh. I don't have a public account. I don't care if people want to follow me, but I'm not doing it for any reason besides just the messages I get sometimes from people. Hey, I needed that. My close friends and people that know me a little bit deeper know that I've been through a lot. I've had an amazing cycling career. I've had a shit cycling career. I struggled with drinking for a long time. I haven't drank in nearly 3 years, and that was the best decision of my life. And if I can ever reach out to people or have them reach out, and that's what I like social media for, is that you can make those connections. But describing who I am as the person, from these fuck ups that I've done in life, I'm not going to sit there and look back at it. I'm going to calculate how to move on, how to get past it, how to learn. It's that's a line that people in the machine world understand. There is levels of calculation needed, but specifically in spiders, I don't have the availability to fuck up. It's something that, yes, I will come off as, crack a Mickey Mouse joke hanging off the side of a 48-degree slope doing dumbass shit. But that is literally me sitting there decompressing for a second, because I am processing so much all day long that I have to be calculated. I don't have the availability to mess up.
That's heavy. And just really kind of drawing from the situation too in itself. Like, you're not really joking around when you mean like a 30-degree plus pitch, 40-degree plus pitch, a 50-degree plus pitch. You're literally putting yourself in positions where it's uncomfortable for most.
Yeah. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a point that people that know me solely as just being a fucking wisecrack and a borderline, like, kind of a loose cannon. They find out what I do, and they're like, wait, what? You can do that? And I'm like, uh-huh. And I do it well, and I have to do it well because I have to stay alive.
Obviously, it takes skill to do something like that. And I don't necessarily, my opinion is that I think that people can definitely be trained, but I think there's kind of a line. But do you think that anybody can operate a machine?
Plain and simple, no. There's absolutely different levels of operators, but that is an unfortunate part of this industry, both snowcats and heavy machinery, is that there is not qualifications needed. Oftentimes people who run machines are painted as uneducated, whatever, fat. Like, that's not the case. There's a skill set, a dexterity, a wholesome well-being of fucking self that you have to be, you either get it or you don't. What you do past that point is where you end up in machines. But there is people that have been in machines because, things were different back in the day, and they don't get it. When you see someone that can operate a machine and truly make it sing, and this goes back to my early days in machinery, I was surrounded by incredibly talented operators where I saw good habits. You learn how material management, you learn it's not just what you're seeing, your blade, your bucket. You have to think bigger scope. And that's the next level, but it's literally the hydraulic sense of fucking scratching your head and patting your stomach. Can you move your hands and do something with your feet? Do you have the ability to And that I absolutely will stand on that. Not everyone can operate. And unfortunately, I think that's a big problem in the industry, especially with snowcats. They're looked at as a machine that there's so much draw to them, but there is not a classification needed. Yes, everyone says that pay needs to be higher. I absolutely agree with that. And there's some people that are a little quieter about that, because my response to pay being higher is that crew sizes will without a doubt go down, because you don't need people filling seats if you fill them with very qualified people. You don't need quarterbacks in every realm, but what 3 qualified guys can do, even just grooming, compared to a pack of 8, is night and day. And if there was some sort of regulation, and not a union, but like literally, people need to be told no. That's an okay answer in life. And that is unfortunately something that doesn't come out very often, that no is an okay answer. No is an answer that most people don't want to hear. When I get told no, I don't want to hear it. But if there's reason, that's an acceptable answer in life. And I think that needs to be told more of, hey, you're not cut out for this. You know, I wanted to play basketball when I was in high school. I was fucking 5'2" for a long time. Sorry, dude, ain't happening. That was a no. I've absolutely gifted in machinery. I'm thankful for that, but I'm also a product of my environment, where I learned these further skill sets from being around incredibly qualified operators, both summer and winter. And it stemmed from this single step of understanding how to operate. And I mean, you could talk about this for weeks of breaking it down. Where does it all begin? But I think the simple question is, what are you trying to do with the machine? And that's a question that you can put to someone that it'll put the writing on the wall very quickly. When they do not have a way to articulate an answer of what they're trying to do, they don't fucking get it. And, you know, it's an unfortunate cloud that's over the industry entirely, is that I want to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I wanted to be a physicist, but I'm being facetious on that. But it's just, no is an okay answer, and no needs to be an answer that becomes involved in the machine world. That, unfortunately, sorry, buddy, you're not cutting it. Well, this hurt my feelings. Tough shit. Sorry. You're not doing the job.
What's maybe the best advice that you would give someone who's interested in pursuing a career in operating equipment, building, maintaining trails, parks, dirt, whatever it is? What's maybe some of that advice?
First off, what's stopping you? And I'm not asking that in like a pushy sort of way, but go back to the writing, plan it out. Housing, moving, plan it out. If you literally break this shit down piece by piece, all these problems become a lot easier to handle. What do you want to become? Where do you want to go with this skill set? And I've touched on this a little bit, but not everyone can be the quarterback. Find a role, figure out what it's going to take, and go. I've gotten that question a decent amount with how I went from my background trails to building with SPT. It's because I knew how to manage a fuck ton of snow. I knew how to manage projects. And I also knew that I didn't want to go in and argue builds. Those guys knew a project that they were doing. It was not a public park where it's really open for the plans of what's going on is predetermined. And I always had a very open mind with, this is what we're doing and this is what we need to do. Okay, perfect. And I loved that assistant role. And that's what I was very good at. And that's, I think, the difference of the Spiders, where I was the lead. You know, I had all that stress. Where in the winter, yes, there was perceived stresses, there was things going on, but for a whole, my job was simple. Move a fuck ton of snow move it strategically. You have to put it in right areas. Yes, you have to know the concept of what we're building, obviously. But I saw that opportunity, and what kept me from jumping into terrain parks at Breckinridge, and I still hold this to this day, is I quickly was climbing the totem pole on the trail side. And with the tenured staff that was the Breck Terrain Park, Eric Armfield, Nick, Ray, Greg Davidson. I mean, there is a stout group. Matt Adams, Nick's right-hand man for a long time. Their park staff was somewhere where I could have fit in at the very bottom, and I would have been helpful. But I saw a longevity in my career going with the trail side where I was now going to be able to have the opportunity to learn winching. And, I took that, and I saw a door cracked, and I kicked it wide the fuck open and ran, where I saw bigger opportunities for the position that I was in. And, I took that skill. And after a little bit of time, those guys were calling me, "Hey, man, you want to run a winch with us?" "Fuck yeah, I do." "Hey, you've got a skill set. We need you. We need you to help stack snow all night long. Do what you know how to do. Do what you're very good at." "Okay, perfect." And that was a role that, I saw that and I knew what I wanted to be. And it was a way that I could essentially weasel my way into their path of, and that's exactly what put me on the radar. There might've been other circumstances. I don't know exactly how it all ended up. Yes, I've got a good attitude, but I'm an incredibly good assistant, which is kind of funny. I'm proud of that. These guys that are the absolute pinnacles of builders, they will all, without a doubt, say they are where they are. Projects become far easier when you have someone that knows what they're doing with you. Someone that doesn't care about, and they can have that pressure. That's for them. Working with Sam Kiley, like he and I have built a shit ton of stuff together. There's people in the industry that I'd like to work with. Charles. I mean, I could fill a role, and I'm not going to go in there saying, "Okay, now it's my turn to do what you're doing." I don't want that. And that's where these younger guys, take that opportunity, look at what you're doing, look where you want to go, and have a plan. Don't spend time for 6 years chasing something without having an idea of where you're trying to go. Unfortunately, as I've joked about a lot in my life, but the millennial personality, Gen X, whatever the fuck you want to call it, there is a slight learning curve with life is not a participation trophy either. Just because you have been in a cat for 4 weeks doesn't mean that you're ready for this. You have to fucking prove yourself. And that is something that I haven't quite figured out a way to get away from that old mentality of, but it's true. You're not going to get offered a position to go into an area that you have zero complex idea of how to do it. You have to show that, okay, you're on a boring green run tonight. Make that thing look amazing. There's fucking rollers and blade dives and fucking zipper lines everywhere. And then you want to tell me you want to come up into my home, up in the high country, or you want to come do this dig out of a lift? I don't know. You can't seem to handle that green run. Why am I going to give you that opportunity? So having that goal of where you want to go with it is a massive step.
I want to know too, real quick, before we get into a really new segment of the show, but I want to get into something that is kind of near and dear to my heart, but I want to know what you think of the future, where you think the future of either industry that you want to elaborate on and your experiences that you've had in them, dirt or snow.
Whew. I still look at it as a blank canvas. There has already been amazing things done, and keeping that creativity alive. There is transitions. Things are changing. They consistently will. Specifically in the dirt world, I think opportunities that are coming, machinery is becoming far more complex, where capabilities are getting more advanced, where these seemingly complicated projects are now becoming feasible. Technology, obviously, with autonomous vehicles is a topic of discussion, but I think in the realm of what we're talking about with specifically snowcats and, let's call it spiders. Yes, there is autonomous vehicles in the mining industry, but there is a massive human touch that is still needed in these machines, and people need to run with that. People need to prove that there needs to be a intelligent mind thinking of what's going on. And as long as people are putting their foot forward of showing that creativity and don't become someone that's already done something, be an individual. It's challenging.
Quick questions, and we're going to call it the rapid fire. So, are you ready, Kevin?
Ready.
Here we go. Rapid fire. Question number 1. Favorite shift, swing or grave?
I'm still young and single. Graves.
Grave guys. What up? All right. I think the big question here is hourly or salary?
If you can make salary work, knowing what hours are going to be, salary is often waved in front of people with the idea of a 40-hour work week. Salary becomes a real shitty one where you're not doing 40-hour work weeks anymore. I don't know. There's something to be said about just a fat check after doing just punishing hours when you're getting paid hourly. So hourly.
Another deep one, replacing a grouser or replacing a hose?
That smell of hydro will forever haunt me. That is, not to jump off topic, but that is a skill set that when you have that ability, sight, sense, touch, whatever, 6 senses, that fucking smell of a hydro leak when you don't know exactly where it comes from will forever haunt me. General idea of changing a hose, pretty simple. However, you always get covered in fucking hydro. So I'm saying grouser.
5 songs in a machine on rotation. What are they?
That is incredibly difficult. I listen to everything. I've been on Kick, a band called the Chats, specifically Smoko, a 3-piece punk band out of Australia. Never been down to the land of Oz, but I would love to get down there. And those guys are fucking hilarious. Couldn't go out without DMX. I mean, are you really working if you're not DMXing? Iron Maiden Trooper. I don't have that tattooed on my ribs for no apparent reason. Brad Herder loves Phil Collins. He just absolutely would. I mean, every single time that we were in Cats, he would just play In the Air Tonight. And I could, if I hear that song, I just think of Brad. That's it. I mean, maybe it was me that was playing it all the time. I don't know. And last but not least, this one was actually kind of funny as well. Wu-Tang, Bring the Motherfucking Ruckus. I used to queue up the Mountain Radio and play that intro over the radio at inopportune hours during times where people were around and they should not have heard that. And it provided a lot of humor to me when it was a search mission for whoever was doing that. And there was always one individual who was stirring the pot. Me. And it never got pointed at me.
Last rapid fire question. Favorite place to ski?
That, I don't know. That is the absolute beauty of skiing anywhere. I've skied in North Carolina. I've skied all over the Western U.S. Backcountry, you're by yourself. If you're lucky enough to be sliding on snow, you're lucky enough. You know, I do enjoy solo missions. I ski by myself a lot, but there's nothing that can be replicated with skiing with friends. And it doesn't matter wherever the fuck you are, you will find something fun. And if you can't, you're not doing it right.
Kevin, I think I want to know too, who's had the biggest impact on your life outside of the ski and snowboard world? Let us in on that one.
That's such a big part of my life. So to look outside is challenging. This is going to be an odd answer, but run with me for a second. Future and past me. And I don't talk about that in a narcissistic way, but I consistently look at where I want to be and what have I done. I have had an amazing career. I've had ups and downs. I struggled with drinking. I no longer, fortunately, I'm at a point where it doesn't bother me as much anymore. I fucking don't drink. There was dark times then. I live by the simple thing. If I'm happy with what I'm doing, then keep doing it. Where do I want to be? I look at the future. I'm not a big planner. I don't know what I'm going to be 10 years from now, but it sounds awful cynical, but if I die tomorrow, would I be happy? I don't mind living like that. It's a way that it keeps me doing what I consistently love to do. None of us know when that day is going to happen, right? So how are you going to navigate to be the person that you want to be? And I think consistently learning from past experiences, surrounding yourself with positive people. You find someone that has something that you want, figure it out. I've had an awful lot of positive influences in my life. It's one of those things that I've taken a lot of lessons from them, individual people, but there's not really one person that outside the ski and snowboard world that is the pinnacle light. It's something I like to learn from past experiences, both positive and negative. I'm not going to live in the past. I don't live with regrets, but there's been things that I would prefer to never deal with again. And if you go into life with an open mind, always trying to learn, I think you're going to end up on a path that is far more fulfilling.
It's deep. Can I make that my ringtone or my alarm every morning?
As long as you set it as Gollum talking.
Is there anybody else you want to thank before we jump off?
I want to thank absolutely every single person that I've had the opportunity to work with, whether it was positive or negative. I've learned an awful lot. I am grateful for where I am. I'm running with a skill set that makes me happy. I'm playing in machines. I'm doing dumb shit. Scares the fuck out of me, but I love it. And thanks to anyone that's ever taken a risk, all the way down from my beginning days at Breck, Odie, Randy, SPT days, obviously Papa, everyone that's allowed me to work with them. I appreciate it. I wouldn't be what I am without my surroundings. And thank you, Parker. Honestly, this has been a really cool opportunity. You're painting a limelight of an unsung hero career for the most part, and you're providing guidance to who we are, and that's really unique, and it's admirable for the steps that you've taken, and it's damn cool, man. And thank you for letting me be a part of this.
The thanks goes to you for pouring your heart out, taking the time, being on the show, and just letting people know what's up and where you've been and how they can go forward just based on what you can share. So thank you, sir.
Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure.
Huge shout out to Kevin Soller for being this week's episode. I appreciated everything that Kevin had to say with respect to just living in a mountain town. Sometimes it's not as glorious as it's chalked up to be. And, frankly, I think the biggest takeaway that I had from it was just be you. Like, do yourself, Be you. I think that's the only thing that matters, really, and that's usually your best self, when you are yourself. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media, and don't forget to send in your push road questions of the day. You know the deal. Don't be a dick. Fill your machine up with diesel at the end of your shift, please.